Hey, what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here, aka north.est, and welcome back to another video. And this video is going to be more of a leisure video. It's more going to be our first ever Q&A, and I've never done before, and I kind of want to wait to once I hit like 1,000 subs to do that, and we've done that. We're like 1,000 plus. So I think it's time that I did a Q&A because I feel like there's some things you guys don't know about me, or you guys want to know more about photography, any tips of that nature. So yeah, we're gonna actually get into our Q&A, and yeah, let's get into it. All right, cool. So our first question comes from Double D40. All right, so he asks, what is your favorite application to edit photos? Tips for beginners. So a little history background with myself is that when I first got started in photography, I had no history background with Lightroom and Photoshop. My first ever camera wasn't an actual DSLR or a mirrorless camera. My first camera was like my iPhone 3GS. And when I got my first camera phone, I actually went out and I took amazing photos. I took landscape photos, I took pictures of strangers, everybody. And at the time when Instagram was a photo sharing app, not anymore, I would get so many followers because it was a photo sharing app at the time. But to answer your question, when I got into the whole mirrorless camera, which the Canon M50 was in fact my first ever mirrorless camera, I started to understand more about how JPEGs worked, how RAW works, how compressed and uncompressed pictures work. So, and doing that, you can't edit those type of photos in Instagram because you're only gonna be getting filters from Instagram that puts on your photos. So to be a better photographer, I use Lightroom and I used to use Photoshop too to enhance my photos. Now, the reason why I have those two platforms is because I also have access to Premiere Pro because I am also a content creator. I also create videos. And there is a plan for people who want to, if they don't want to buy Premiere Pro and they want to have like a monthly plan, you could also download Premiere Pro, you can download After Effects, you can download Photoshop, Adobe Lightroom CC, all that stuff. You can do all that with a plan, and that's what I did. And it took me about maybe 6 months to almost 8 months to actually get a grasp of Lightroom and Photoshop. It can be a bit intimidating the way it looks and the layout, but I promise you it's so easy to learn. And there's so many videos out there that can teach you the basics of Lightroom and Photoshop. So if you're just learning, I would say go ahead and try to get a subscription with Adobe and get Lightroom and Photoshop. That's what I use. I know people use other systems, but this is what I personally use and I love using it. All right, cool. So next question is from Daniel Valls is, I would like to know how you manage your storage for your photos. Great question, man. I use two things actually. I use a SSD and an HDD, sorry. What are those actually? So an HDD is a hard disk drive and an SSD is a solid state drive. What are the difference? Well, an HDD has a lot of moving parts inside of it. It makes a lot of noise when you're importing things inside of it, or whether you're trying to load something up. For an SSD, it's kind of quiet. It doesn't make a lot of noise. It works really fast and efficient. The lifespan of an SSD is kind of shorter than an HDD. I can leave a chart here so you can see. But what I usually do with this, because I also do video work for YouTube, I usually import all my projects, my current projects, onto my SSD because those are projects I haven't worked on yet, whether it be videos, photos, everything else. So I use my SSD to import my current projects, and projects that are already finished and done with, I import those projects into my HDD. Reason why I do that is because my SSD is my workhorse. That's what I use when I travel, when I want to get some fast editing done. You can't really get that done with an HDD. You could, but what happens is when you load up your project from an HDD, it's going to load your projects very slowly. It's going to make your applications run slowly. So that's why I recommend using an SSD. It costs a little more money, but I promise you it's a bang for your buck. Like, I promise you it's going to be great. You can ask anybody else, they use an SSD to work on their projects, work on their photos, work on their videos. That's how they get things done. Now, I don't know if I can get in focus, but I do use the Samsung SSD solid state drive. This is very small, compact. It has a little fingertip here, so like if I lose this for any reason, no one can have access to my projects. So this is what I use. It's a bit pricey. It's like around like $112. This is like a 1 terabyte one, but they have one for like 500 gigs, 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes. I think you can get away with 500 gigs if you're just doing photography. But for me, because I'm doing photography and video work, I got a 1 terabyte drive because it's gonna be carrying a lot of my projects. And I've been doing about 46 plus videos and photos on this, and I'm still only at like 128 gigabytes used. So I say honestly it's worth it. But to answer your question, that's how I basically import all my photos, is through my SSD, and then once it's all edited and done with, I transport them all to my HDD. All right, cool. Carlos asks, has anyone in the streets ever got angry because you took a photo of them? Yes. Do I care? No. Next question. No, I'm kidding. So this kind of leads up to, I did a video on this in the past, and that was tips on doing street photography. Doing street photography, that's gonna be part of it. So obviously, if you're doing street photography, that's going to be including architectural photography as well as portrait photography of strangers. That's basically what you're doing mostly when you're doing street photography, are those two type of categories. My advice to you, and I'll also link this video down below in the description or somewhere up here, because I did cover this topic in that video, where it can be very daunting and it can be very scary if someone catches you taking a picture of them and your biggest fear is them approaching you. What I mentioned was that if they approach you, you took a photo of them, and they say, "Hi, you took a picture of me," you say yes. If for any reason they feel so uncomfortable with that and actually delete it, just delete it. You know, it's not the end of the world. You know, it maybe have been a great photo, but just delete the photo. It's not that serious. Usually for me is that if you're just starting out, I would say maybe just get a zoom lens. So you can probably put yourself in a good position to where you could take a picture of someone without even noticing you. So for me, what I use for the Canon M50, I use the 55-250mm lens, and I can really get a lot of great photos with that lens without anyone seeing me. Now, of course, on a crop sensor lens, it's going to be a 88-400mm. Now, when I'm using the Sony a7 III, I like using the Viltrox 85mm. It's a prime fixed focal length. So usually with that lens, I've gotten a lot comfortable with taking pictures of strangers. And I think over time, the more you do, the better you become at it. So I know when I first got started doing street photography, it was very scary. I'll be honest with you, it was scary. And it's scary for everybody else who gets started in doing it. But I would say to get better at something, you have to keep doing it. So yeah, if someone sees you, take a picture of them, and then they actually approach you, probably like just delete the photo. You know, they're not gonna fight you over it. They're not gonna beat you up. Like, it's whatever. Don't quote me on that though. I don't know. I've never seen an incident where someone took a picture of somebody and then they fought them over it. I've never seen that happen. But living in New York City, you know, I don't think people care, honestly, because they just like whatever about it. You know, and also they probably think you're a tourist, you know, because the first thing that people do in New York City is they take pictures of everything, because you can really get sucked up in everything that goes on in the city, from the skyscrapers to the historical monuments, to its people, to everything else. You know, you can really get sucked into it. So I don't think people really pay attention to that. But if you're living in a rural area, I definitely understand that, you know. So I would say maybe just get like a fixed focal length, or not fixed, but get like a zoom lens rather. Get a zoom lens and really practice on that until you get better, until you're like, you know what, I don't need this. I can actually do a prime lens. I could do like an 85 lens and work with that. So that's, if that's what you're wondering, Carlos, that's my advice to you to do, honestly. All right, next question. All right, Will ask, what's one thing you've noticed about New York City since you've been looking at the city through a lens? Wow, Will, that is an amazing question. That is an amazing question. Wow. You know, honestly, I didn't give it that much thought because I've always just been like going out and just shooting photography. for about 5 years here in New York City. I've been living here for about 12 years though, but professionally for 5 years though. I think the one thing that I've noticed is the architecture. Like the New York City skyscrapers are so amazing. Like you kind of just want to get in the head of the architect, the designer, of how do they really get the inspiration to design this building, you know, and how, from my job as a photographer, like how can I take this photo? How can I get the most out of this picture from this building? You know, and it's not just that, it's also its people and the subways, just everything all together. Like you can get sucked in so easily if you're not from the city because there's so much going on. And obviously New York City is known to be as a very fast-paced city. You know, it's always constantly moving. So as a photographer, I really have to really just take the time to sit back and really analyze everything around me that's going on, you know. And doing a POV video, like I will see so many things happening all at once, and I just have to like really take a deep breath, relax, because I am also an anxious person, so I really have to just take my time with it and really analyze everything that's going on around me. So that's the one thing I've noticed as a photographer living in New York City and viewing everything through a lens, if that makes sense, you know. I would say like people who told me like, you know what, you're so lucky to live in a city like New York City and be a photographer there. I'm like, yeah, you know, that's true. But it's also saying here that says the grass is always greener on the other side. And for me personally, like even though I'm living in New York City, I've always been so astounded by mountains and like the landscapes. I one day want to visit Utah. I want to visit Seattle. I want to visit Vancouver. I want to see these places. I want to hike and analyze these landscapes because they're so beautiful. And I'm pretty sure people who live in those areas who want to come to the big city and experience the same thing. So I think that those trade-offs are equal, you know. So I'm always so fascinated by New York City and just everything about it. But I'm also fascinated by mountains. I'm also fascinated by nature. And I definitely want to experience that for future content. All right, cool. And so for our last tip, it is a pretty big tip. It's from Natalie's Artistic Corner. She's asking me 3 questions. There's 3 questions here. So the first question is, what are some tips for editing that you may have? And my biggest questions are lenses, especially for the Canon M50. How do you know which one is good for what? What are some good street photography portrait lenses for the M50? Answering any of those questions will be super helpful. I've been binge watching all your videos and I love your style of photos. Amazing job. Natalie, I thank you so much for that question. And I truly love the feedback that you give me about my content and love that you're binge watching it. Thank you so much. Because sometimes when I go back to watch my old videos, I sometimes cringe of how it looks. But yeah, that's the process of being a content creator, is seeing how far you've come and just cringing on to your old videos. If you guys want to see me do a cringe video of my old photos, comment down below. I would love for you guys to see me in pain for maybe 15, 20 minutes. I don't know. But back to the question. So the first question is, what are some tips for editing that you may have? All right, so the question that you asked all deserve a video on itself, but I will answer these questions really fast and efficiently. But I will say, if you're just starting out with photography and you want to get into more in-depth editing, you don't know how shadows work, you know how to adjust your whites, your blacks, you know how contrast works when it comes to darkness and light, you don't understand like exposure works, all that stuff. I would say, and for me personally, I don't like using this, but I would say use presets. Now with using presets, right, I would say I've seen a lot of photos where people use like for like cityscapes, right? Like a lot of blues, a lot of orange hues, which is beautiful and I really love it, honestly, but I kind of want to see more colors in the photo. And that's just my style, for example. So I would say if you want to get better at photography, I would say, or rather editing your photos, I would say use presets. because it allows you to open your eyes more, a little bit more to colors, and it literally shows you what you like more in your photos. So you're like, okay, you know what? I like these blacks, but let's bring those blacks down a little bit. I like the whites, so let's bring the whites up a little bit. Let's work on the contrast, let's work on the vignetting, everything else, the texture, all that stuff. So I would say get presets, you know, and I will say learn from there, and then over time you can learn to develop your own presets, and that's how you get better as a photographer. All right, so the second tip is, how do you know which one is good for what when it comes to using lenses for the Canon M50? Honestly, that's something you have to really experience on yourself, because I've mentioned this earlier, and I really do need, once I get to my new location, I will do a video on this, because I think it's a very important topic to talk about, because every type of lens has their own different responsibilities and their own properties. You know, because again, you have your wide lenses, you have your fixed prime lenses, you have your zoom lenses, and each one of those lenses have a different core structure in how you take photos. You know, if you want to get a wide aspect photo like this one, where you get the whole picture in, you get the photo, you get the buildings, people in it, you know, you want to use a wide lens, because you can't get a shot like this with a prime or a prime fixed lens or a zoom lens. You know, a wide focal ratio lens will definitely get this photo. Now, if you want to do portrait photography or like street photography, I would say your two main lenses you should use for street photography is a wide lens and a prime lens. So if you're looking to portraits of strangers, I would say get a portrait like an 85mm, so at least it gives you that good distance from you and the subject. But again, if you're kind of scared to approach that subject, then get a zoom lens, so like a 70-200 or a 55-250, things like that. So you don't have to be so close to that person. You can take that photo in a safe distance where they don't notice you. And then that kind of ties in with like, so what are some good lenses for the Canon M50 for street photography? And I can only tell you what I've been using. I can't really say about anything else, but I would say what I use really is, I use probably three main lenses, and that is the Canon 22mm, the Sigma 30mm, and I also use the Canon 55-250. Now, always keep in mind of the APC crop ratio, okay? So for the 55-250, it's going to be, I think, an 88-400mm lens. For the Sigma 30mm, it's going to come up to a 48mm, which makes it a true 50mm lens, which is really great. And the Sigma 30mm is an amazing lens. It takes amazing photos. It's very crisp, very clear. I've taken so many photos with this lens. I highly recommend it. As well as I use a 22mm lens to really get a lot of wide shots for like architectural shots, as well as shots that you can't really get with like a 50mm or 85mm, obviously. Also, by the way, I'll list every item that I list in this video will be down in the description below if you check them out. If you guys purchase from those links, guys, I do get a commission. These are our affiliate links. So if you guys buy from those links, the money does go back to the channel, and it is so much appreciated if you guys do that, you know, because what it does is you guys put into the channel, I put back out of it to you guys, and it helps me create better videos like these. So I thank you. But Natalie, that was a great question. Natalie, I promise I'm gonna be making a video for those three type of questions. I'm gonna hold on to those questions because those are three important different videos to talk about. And yeah, I'm definitely gonna be creating content for that, for sure. All right, well guys, that's going to be the end of the Q&A. Guys, I appreciate all the questions that you guys asked me. Yeah, this is like my first ever Q&A. I know it's a little weird and awkward for me to like talk about myself or like how I work, but it's how you guys learn, it's how you guys take in information. And I really do appreciate all the questions you guys asked here. And who knows, maybe I'll definitely do another one when we hit, I don't know, like 5K subs or 10K subs. So if you guys want to do another Q&A, make sure you subscribe to this channel. But with all that being said, guys, thank you so much for checking back with the channel. I really do appreciate it. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Like this video as well too, and comment down below any questions that you want to have in the future. I will hold on to those questions in the future so I can do a future Q&A. But with that being said, guys, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all so much. I will see y'all in the next video. Peace.